guys, today I'm going to do a vegan breakfast video. Breakfast is probably the easiest thing that you can make vegan. I mean, like toast, peanut butter, oatmeal. So I'm going to go over my 3 favorite breakfasts that I like to make. They're super filling. These will keep you full for a long time. If I eat this in the morning, I'm like always good for probably like 3 or 4 hours until I need to eat lunch. If you're not a morning breakfast person, you can also make these ahead of time and eat them later in the day. These are meals that I also just like bring to work or bring to school because they're easy to transport, they're easy to prep, and they're super cheap. Another thing that I love about these breakfasts is they are so cheap. Like the pancakes that I'm going to make are for like 3 servings, it's under 10 cents. That's because like oats are probably the cheapest ingredient that I have ever bought. I go to Costco and get a huge like 2 giant bags like this big, and that is less than $10, and those last me like 6 months, and I eat oats every day pretty much. So anything that's using oats is going to be super cheap, which we love. Amaranth is probably the least cheap, most expensive. Also, if you're gluten-free, then amaranth is a great alternative, way cheaper than buying specifically gluten-free oatmeal, so that's something to consider as well. I think that's all I need to say for the intro, so let's just get rolling. Okay, so the first meal I'm going to make is oatmeal. I usually use between 1/3 and 1/2 cup of the dry oats. And I just put it in a microwave-safe bowl. Then I always add chia seeds and flax seeds. Chia seeds are great for like soaking up the moisture, and they make the oatmeal a lot creamier. For the flax seeds, just make sure that they're ground flax seeds because that allows us to absorb the omega-3s from them. Next, I'm just adding soy milk. I don't have a specific amount that I add. I just kind of like fill up the bowl until everything's wet, and then microwave that for about 2 minutes. You can always add more milk after, so I would recommend like don't overload it with the milk at first. So now after 2 minutes, all of the seeds really soak everything up so it gets really thick, and then I just add like a tablespoon of maple syrup, and I'll also put some cinnamon on there, and that is pretty much it. So that's pretty thick. You can obviously like make it thinner by adding more milk if you want to, or if you like really thick oatmeal, then don't add as much soy milk. I usually top it with bananas. Sometimes I put chocolate chips on too, but that is pretty much it. The nutritional value for this meal is pretty great. The biggest thing for me is that it has like 50% of the fiber I need for the day, which is pretty crazy, and also it has a lot of manganese, calcium, there's a fiber there. Yeah, it's great stuff. The other thing that's awesome is the omega-3s. That is all from the flax seeds and chia seeds, and those are essential. The next recipe I'm going to make is amaranth, and I always make mine in my Instant Pot just because it has the pressure cooker setting. You could probably make it in any pressure cooker. So I use 1 cup of amaranth seeds. I just do like 2 half cups because my container is small, and then I'm going to do 2 cups of water. So it's basically 1 part amaranth, 2 parts water. And then I'm going to close that up, make sure it's sealed, and then I'm going to set the pressure cooker timer for 7 minutes. That's all you need to cook your amaranth. And then after that, once it's done, you can put it in a container and put it in the fridge to have anytime you want. So then I just scoop out as much as I want for that day, and then I'm going to add some soy milk. It's kind of similar to the way I prepare my oatmeal. Mix it up. Amaranth is not very like absorptive once it's already cooked, but if you add flax seeds or other seeds, then it absorbs the moisture and makes it creamier just the same way that oatmeal does. I'm going to microwave that for 1.5 minutes, and then sometimes I add some more milk if I want it to be like creamier. Then I'm gonna add maple syrup again, and also cinnamon, pretty much the same way that I prepare my oatmeal, but with amaranth instead. And finally, this is the recipe that takes the longest to make, but I think it's the best one. It's 5 ingredient pancakes. Those are the 5 ingredients that you need, and that's pretty much all you need. I'm going to use flaxseed to make a flax egg, which is basically 1 part flax seed that are ground, and then 3 parts water. So if you use like 1 tablespoon of flaxseed, then use like 3 tablespoons of water. I made like 2 eggs here. This is what your flax egg will look like when you first mix it, but then it really firms up and it gets like really gelatinous, and that's what keeps everything sticking together in your pancakes. Now I'm going to make oat flour, which is basically just I take quick oats, put them in the magic bullet, and then run the bullet for long enough until all the oats just turn into a powder, and then that is basically you have made oat powder or oat flour. Before I add the powder to the bowl though, I'm going to add a little bit of vanilla extract. This part makes me nervous every time because sometimes I add way too much. Okay, good. Yeah, that one was good. And I'm also going to add like a teaspoon or so of baking powder. About a tablespoon or so. Next I'm going to mix that up and then add in some soy milk. Usually I just eyeball this, but I use some measuring cups so that if you want to make this recipe at home, you have like a better idea. So I add about a half cup at first. I'm gonna mix that up just so that the like oat flour has something to like stick to. Then I'm going to just measure this out quickly. So this is 1 cup. The oat powder like fills like a little bit more than this, but I'm gonna add more later, and it ends up equaling out around like 2 cups. Yeah, just dump that in there. Okay, good enough. And now I'm gonna mix that up. I'm gonna end up adding more soy milk to this. And so now we're at 1 cup of soy milk and 1 cup of oat flour. And mix it up. Next I'm going to go back and add more oats. If you have a bigger blender, you could do this step all in one where you just put like a bunch of oats in a blender, but I'm just using a magic bullet, so I have to do this in like 2 steps. So again, usually I just eyeball this, but just to figure out like the proportions that you should be using, I figured out that like I use about 2 cups of the oat flour because the first time was a bit more than a cup, this time it's a little bit less, but I add that in. This is going to make 8 pancakes, so if you want to change the recipe based on how many pancakes you need to make, then that is totally fair. I'm going to add more soy milk, so the final like amount of soy milk to oat flour ratio was 2 cups of oat flour and 1.5 cups of soy milk, or you could use any non-dairy milk. This part's important because this obviously does not look like regular pancake batter. It is a lot thicker, but it needs to be that thick for these to work out. So don't imagine like the way that regular pancake batter looks, because that will not give you good pancakes when you're using oat flour and no eggs. Next I'm just going to add a little bit of like vegan margarine to the pan. You could use olive oil or Pam or anything that you want just so that it doesn't stick. I'm going to spread that butter around and then just wait until the pan heats up. So next I'm going to add the batter to the pan. Because it's so thick, you do have to like kind of spread out the batter like manually with a spoon or whatever you're using to scoop it. And they won't just flatten out by themselves. This is how they should look right after you put them in, and I added chocolate chips as well to the batter. I'll also note that I am cooking these at around like a medium temperature. You definitely don't want to go too high because they can burn, especially if you have chocolate chips in there. And you have to wait about 5 minutes each side. This is about 5 minutes and you can see the edges are like starting to kind of like firm up, and they will be really easy to flip at this point. So we're just going to go ahead and flip those over. When I flip them, I also kind of like squish them down because again, they won't spread out like regular pancakes. Once they're done, they should look like kind of white on top like this. Like they will almost get like crispy on the outside, which is good. That's how you know they're done. Then I'm just gonna put those on a plate like so. When I'm eating mine, I like to put banana on top and then also just use maple syrup. I just use like Costco organic maple syrup, and that is pretty much it. The thickness of your pancakes should be about that thick, and also if you want to save them for later, they are great as leftovers. So hopefully that makes it a little bit less daunting for how to cook vegan breakfast, and that you don't always have to eat toast or bagels or any of the kind of more processed types of breakfasts that are just really easy to put together. I know a lot of people aren't big breakfast eaters, and I go through phases kind of too where I'm like, oh, I really want to eat a huge breakfast, but then when I have to sometimes be waking up at 5 o'clock, I don't want to be having pancakes. But the good thing about these breakfasts is that they're very easily like meal prepped. Like you can make these and they are edible for a long time afterwards. Other than that, thanks for watching and I'll see you soon.